Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Continuing our study of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is the Srimad Bhagavatam translated with commentaries by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And we are in Volume 6, Chapter 4, the Hamsaguya prayers have been offered by Prajapati Daksha with love and devotion. The Lord has been pleased by this offering, and He is appearing before Daksha. And He's appearing in His 8-armed form, and all 8 arms are carrying weapons. And Daksha is very happy to see this form of the Lord. And He's accompanied by demigods, the residents of the higher planetary systems, the saints and sages, Narada Muni. And they're all traveling with the Lord on either side of Him, and also there's a long line behind Him. And they're all offering prayers and glorification of the Lord. And now the Lord is speaking to Daksha. He's continuing describing Himself to Daksha. He says, "My dear Brahman, austerity in the form of meditation is my heart. Vedic knowledge in the form of hymns and mantras constitute my body. And spiritual activities and ecstatic emotions are my actual form. The ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices, when properly conducted, are the various limbs of my body. The unseen good fortune proceeding from pious or spiritual activities constitutes my mind, and the demigods who execute my orders in various departments are my life and soul." So this is how the Lord is manifest in the material. That can be understood in terms of, it's kind of a universal form that's being described here. The Lord's form is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. But there's a way to perceive Him in the material energy, and different personalities will meditate on this, what's called the universal form, where the hairs of the body of the Lord, when you see the trees and the plants, they're considered the hairs in the body of the Lord, and the mountains are His bones, and the ocean is His abdomen, sun and moon are His eyes. Different ways to perceive the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in a gigantic universal form. So something similar is being described here, a way to perceive the presence of the Lord. So austerity in the form of meditation is my heart. Be able to perceive the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita also, there are different ways to perceive the Lord. Through what we see and perceive through our material senses. Of sharks, of fish I'm sharks, I'm the strength of the strong, I'm sex life which is not contrary to religious principles. And there's a long list, I think it's the 10th chapter, or one of the middle chapters, where Krishna describes Himself in terms of people and things and creatures that we're familiar with as a way to perceive Him. So he's doing this similarly here in terms of religious practice. It's kind of the universal form of religious practices. Austerity in the form of meditation is my heart. Vedic knowledge in the form of hymns and mantras constitute my body. Spiritual activities and ecstatic emotions are my actual form. That doesn't change. That's the one that's constant. Spiritual activities and ecstatic emotions are my actual form. This is approaching the devotional energy, oh Lord. The ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices, when properly conducted, are the limbs of my body. The unseen good fortune proceeding from pious or spiritual activities constitute my mind, and demigods who execute my orders in various departments are my life and soul. So this is a way to understand the Lord through the religious practices. Prabhupada's commentary. Sometimes atheists argue that since God is invisible to their eyes, they do not believe in God. For them, the Supreme Lord is describing a method by which one can see God in his impersonal form. Intelligent persons can see God in his personal form, as stated in the Shastras. But if one is very eager to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead immediately, face to face, he can see the Supreme Lord through this description, which portrays the various internal and external parts of his body. So similarly, the universal form is for those that are not able to, through devotional service, actually perceive the Lord's personal form. So this is similar to manifesting the universal form. To engage in tapasya, or denial of material activities, is the first principle of spiritual life. Then there are spiritual activities such as performance of Vedic ritualistic sacrifices, study of Vedic knowledge, meditation upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. One should also respect the demigods and understand how they are situated, how they act, and how they manage the activities of the various departments of this material world. So we see the progression here. First, there are spiritual activities, Vedic sacrifices, study of Vedic knowledge, meditation upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. As one should respect the demigods, understand how they're situated. In this way, one can see how God is existing and how everything is managed perfectly because of the presence of the Supreme Lord. So that's without actually being able to perceive the personality of Godhead directly. We can see how everything is being managed by him. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 9:10, Maya dikshena prakrite suyate sacharacharam he tunanena kantaya jagat vibhari partate. Translation: This material world is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. End translation. If one is unable to see the Supreme Lord, although he is present as Krishna in his various incarnations, one may see the Supreme Lord's impersonal feature, according to the direction of the Vedas, by seeing the activities of material nature. There's arrangements for everyone at whatever level they may be in their being able to perceive the Lord. There are The Lord is available. Anything done under the direction of the Vedic injunctions is called dharma, as described by the order carriers of Yamaraj. So we're just reading these order carriers of Yamaraj. We're defending the position that a very sinful person like Ajamil was not subject to the system of punishment and reward because of his contact with devotional service and his calling out for the Lord. So anything done under the direction of Vedic injunctions is called dharma, as described by the order carriers of Yamaraj. Bhagavatam 6.140. Translation: that which is prescribed in the Vedas constitutes dharma, the religious principles. The opposite of that is irreligion. The Vedas are directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan and are self-born. This we have heard from Yamaraj. Okay, I was thinking Vishnu-duta. No, the Yamadutas were defending a lesser position. The Vishnu-dutas presented a superior religious principle of engaging in devotional service. But Yamaraj, to his order carriers, to the best of their ability, understood that whatever is prescribed in the Vedas is religious principles. They knew no higher principle. They saw them as coming directly from the personality of Godhead Narayan, and they had taken instruction from their spiritual master, Yamaraj, their master. So here Prabhupada is quoting this verse: anything done under the direction of Vedic injunction is called dharma. Now, how this discussion is progressing, because Krishna, we started with the impersonalists who are not able to perceive the personal form of the Lord, and how there is arrangement for impersonalists to begin to perceive that everything is being directed by Supreme Being, Supreme Consciousness. And the meditation is something like a universal form meditation, where you see how the Lord is active in the material energy, how he's present. A lot of scientists come to this conclusion in the area of physics, and that there is a superior energy. They come to that conclusion, a lot of them, by studying how material energy works. They do come to that conclusion. And then Prabhupada quotes the Bhagavad Gita, which substantiates that position, that the material nature is working under Krishna's direction. And now he's quoting this verse from the first chapter of Volume 6, Bhagavatam. Anything done under the direction of the Vedic injunctions is called dharma. Okay, which was the position the Yamadutas held. And because they serve the punishment and reward system, they're in charge of enforcing the punishment part of the punishment and rewards. Good behavior, bad behavior, Vedic, according to Vedic Dharma, not according to Vedic Dharma. This is their jurisdiction. In this, now Prabhupada's quoting Madhvacharya. And the paraphrase, 3 verses here, and the paraphrase is, the various demigods are all acting under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and according to their various actions, the demigods are differently named. Okay, so the the main thread of this verse and purport is how everything is controlled by the Lord. But He's in charge of everything, even though someone may not be able to perceive Him directly. Someone who has impersonal realization, they can begin to understand that there is a supreme being. Begin to differentiate like that. They can understand about the demigods. Text 47. The Lord continues, "Before the creation of this cosmic manifestation, I alone existed with my specific spiritual potencies. Consciousness was then unmanifested, just as one's consciousness is unmanifested during the time of sleep. Okay, before the cosmic manifestation, I existed with my spiritual potencies. The living entities were in a kind of sleep within the body of the Lord. These are the materially infected living entities, the rebellious insubordinates. Prabhupada's commentary, the eternally liberated souls, they never go to sleep, they're always engaged in loving transcendental pastimes, very active. But these are the conditioned souls. They're lying asleep, waiting for another cosmic manifestation, the Lord to manifest the next cosmic manifestation, so they can resume their activities. And they take up where they left off. Prabhupada's commentary, the word aham indicates a person. As explained in the Vedas, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam, the Lord is the supreme eternal among innumerable eternals, and the supreme living being among the innumerable living beings. The Lord is a person who also has impersonal features. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1-11, Vedanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yad janam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabdyate. Translation: Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. End translation. Consideration of the Paramatma and the impersonal Brahman arose after the creation. Before the creation, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead existed. Okay, so this Paramatma and Brahman are linked to the material creation. They're not manifest unless the material creation is manifest. When the material creation is not expanded out and displayed, then all there is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in His activities and pastimes with His unlimited associates, unlimited spiritual planets. And there's no consideration of Paramatma or Brahman. There's no consideration of that. When the material creation is expanded out and manifest and displayed, that feature of the Lord, He has this energy that He expands out, then the issue of Brahman realization and Paramatma realization, they're like stepping stones back home, back to realization of Bhagavan. So when there's no material creation, there's no need for Brahman and Paramatma. So these are linked, these expansions of the Lord are linked to the material creation. Consideration of Paramatma and impersonal Brahman arose after the creation. Before the creation, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead existed. As firmly declared in Bhagavad Gita 1859, the Lord can be understood only by bhakti yoga. This is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not a partial manifestation. That original Supreme Personality of Godhead who existed before the creation is understood through devotional service, bhakti yoga. The ultimate cause, the supreme cause of creation, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead who can be understood only by bhakti yoga. He cannot be understood by speculative philosophical research or by meditation, because speculative philosophical research, the highest level that can bring one to is realization of Brahman, the all-pervading spiritual energy of the Lord. And meditation, when done properly, the highest level that can bring a person to is realization of the localized Paramatma feature of the Lord within the heart of all living beings. But the original Supreme Personality of Godhead who existed before Brahman and Paramatma, from whom Brahman and Paramatma are expanded out from, the original source, Krishna, Personality of Godhead, can only be understood by devotional service. He cannot be understood by speculative philosophical research, Brahman, or by meditation, Paramatma, since all such processes come into existence after the material creation. The impersonal and localized conceptions of the Supreme Lord are more or less materially contaminated. The real spiritual process, therefore, is bhakti yoga. As the Lord says, bhakti mama bijananti. Translation, only by devotional service can I be understood. End quote. Before the creation, the Lord existed as a person, as indicated here by the word aham. When Prajapati Daksha saw him as a person who was beautifully dressed and ornamented, he actually experienced the meaning of this word aham through devotional service. So, why waste time with mental speculation or even meditation? Just engage in devotional service. The Lord is pleased by the devotional service under the direction of his bona fide representatives. He'll be pleased to reveal himself, and then the goal of life is achieved. The Brahman realization and the Paramatma realization, Prabhupada very clearly states here, are more or less materially contaminated. It's a lesser platform of realization. And what's being made available, the mercy of Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Sankirtan movement, is pure devotional service is being made available. Might as well take the mercy and run with it. It starts with hearing and chanting. For some of us, it may end with hearing and chanting. But there are a lot of forms of devotional service. Serving the deities. Krishna manifests as a deity form. Serve the deities. Offer one's activities, all of one's activities, and the fruits of all one's labors done as a service to Krishna. Remember Krishna, pray to Krishna, serve the lotus feet of Krishna. a lot of different forms. Devotional service, 9 basic forms. All of them are good, or even one of them is good. There are many saints and sages who have achieved pure devotional service to Krishna simply by performing one of the 9 types of devotional service. Sukadeva Goswami achieved perfection by chanting the glories of the Lord. Maharaj Parikshit achieved perfection by hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Prahlad Maharaj achieved perfection by praying. And there's a list. Just one of the 9 types of devotional service. Why? Because devotional service is absolute. Prabhupada, someone said, Prabhupada, that it's like Krishna, devotional service is like a gingerbread cookie. Wherever you bite into the cookie, it's the same. Gingerbread. Krishna, engaging in devotional service to Krishna is like that. Where you bite into the gingerbread cookie, the gingerbread man. Wherever you taste the gingerbread man, Krishna is there. Prabhupada continues, each person is eternal because the Lord says that he existed as a person before the creation, Agre, and will also exist after the annihilation. The Lord is a person, eternally. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur therefore quotes verses from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:9, 13, and 14. And the paraphrase is, the personality of Godhead appeared in Vrindavan as the son of Mother Yasoda, who bound the Lord with rope, just as an ordinary mother binds a material child. There are actually no divisions of external and internal for the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Satchidananda Vigraha. But when he appears in his own form, the unintelligent think him an ordinary person. Avajananti mam mudha manusim tanamasritam. Although he comes in his own body, which never changes, Mudas, the unintelligent, think that the impersonal Brahman has assumed a material body to come in the form of a person. Brahman has assumed a material body to come in the form of a person. Yes, we have some contemporary religious groups, contemporary spiritual cultures who see like that God is just a spirit, but when he wants to act like a person, then he assumes a material body, and he may even, die. So, but the underlying realization of the Supreme Personality, the Supreme God, the Supreme, he's just a spirit. He's not. He can become a body if he wants to, but ultimately he's just a spirit. So ultimately he's impersonal. He's Brahman. Devotees, they're not in that position. Devotee, the Vaishnav understanding is that he's always a person. And when he comes to the material platform, he comes in his original spiritual body. That's what's being said here. So that's a real miracle how the Lord in his original spiritual body can be seen by materialists with material vision, how he can manifest. It's not possible. Therefore, when the Lord appears, everyone is automatically on the spiritual platform. Automatically their vision is spiritual. They may not like what they see. They may be envious of what they see. And that was certainly the case. But nonetheless, they were engaged in service to the Lord. Perhaps not favorable, maybe challenging, but they nonetheless were engaged in serving the Lord. Like Kamsa. Can't say that he was a devotee. He wanted to kill Krishna. What kind of devotion is that? But he was Krishna conscious. He could perceive Krishna. He could see Krishna. Which means he was already on the spiritual platform. If Krishna's appearing in his original spiritual body, and Kamsa can see him, he's on the spiritual platform. And he's engaged in pastimes. Why? Because sometimes Krishna likes to fight. He likes to dance and sing and eat nice foodstuffs. He likes to be treated by his mother and father as if he was a little child. And he likes to fight. So someone has to fight with Krishna. So when Krishna appears, he appears in his eternal spiritual body, and all his associates appear with him. This is the same with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna. He appears for pastimes. And anyone who can see him or perceive him is immediately on a spiritual platform. There's just no other way to see the Lord without being honest. You can't see the Lord materially. You're automatically on. It's just like the holy name. They would go out on street kirtan amongst the general public, people in general, chanting loudly with drums and musical instruments and putting on a display. Anyone who hears that is immediately engaged on the spiritual platform just by hearing. That's the mercy of the Lord. So when he appears in his original spiritual form, everyone is automatically part of his spiritual activities. They're automatically on the spiritual platform. This is the inconceivable mercy. His bona fide representative has that same ability. He's empowered in the same way. Krishna empowers his pure representative like that. So that's why it's not possible to understand Krishna's appearance. The Mudhas think, oh, spirit has come and taken on a material form. And until reading this verse, I kind of thought that. You try to understand, well, Krishna's a person and he's appearing. How's he appearing? He's got to take on material elements to appear. No, he doesn't. He can appear in his original spiritual form. He can do that. And whatever he comes in contact with is transformed. It's inconceivable mercy. That's why we're still hearing about Krishna's appearance and activities 5,000 years later. Because it's extraordinary. And he has also appeared again in the same way in his original spiritual form as Sri Krishna Chaitanya 500 years ago. His footprints are still fresh in the sand. There are trees still living right now that the Lord touched, passed by, saw, or picked fruit from, whatever. So, very recently, another such miraculous appearance. It's our good fortune, and very well documented, with a living disciplic succession on top of it all. How can we go wrong? Well, in one sense we can't, because it's the will of the Lord. But in another sense, we can. We can get sidetracked for a very, very long time. We can fall off the transcendental bandwagon. If we're not careful. Hearing and chanting must be done. It's the medicine to keep us immune from the material entanglement. So, hearing Bhagavatam. Prabhupada continues, ordinary living beings assume material bodies, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Consciousness, it is stated herein that samyana matram, the original consciousness, Krishna consciousness, was unmanifested before the creation. Although the consciousness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the origin of everything. Ordinary living beings assume material bodies. Personality of Godhead does not. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Consciousness, the original consciousness. Krishna consciousness was unmanifested before the creation, although the consciousness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the origin of everything. Need a little clarity on that. That is, it's pretty deep. Prabhupada's presenting something here. Try to understand a little bit more. About Krishna's position. Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Consciousness. He is the Supreme Consciousness. The original consciousness. That's before the creation. It is stated herein, yeah, and was manifest before the creation. Okay, all right. But now this part. Krishna consciousness was unmanifested before the creation. Although the consciousness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the origin of everything. Sometimes Prabhupada uses Krishna consciousness interchangeable with devotional service. So if we put that in there, now I'll have to let that one go because sometimes there are things like that that just can't fathom. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 2:12, "Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be." End quote. Thus, the Lord's person is the absolute truth in the past, present, and future. Okay, so making that point, regardless of past, present, and future, regardless of creation, manifest or unmanifest, Krishna is not part of the material world, and when he visits the material world, he comes in his original spiritual form. And then when he does that, it's not material anymore. In this regard, Madhvacharya quotes two verses from Matsya Purāṇa. And some paraphrasing of those verses. After the annihilation of everything, the Supreme Lord, because of his Satchidananda Vigraha, remains in his original form. But since the other living entities have material bodies, the matter merges into matter. The subtle form of the spirit remains within the body of the Lord. Yeah. They have that contamination. The Lord's never contaminated. So when the material creation is annihilated, he is as he always was. He is as he always is. And even when he comes to the material, manifests on the material platform, he is who he is. There's no duality in the Lord. He is who he is. Wherever he goes, that's who he is. But the living entities have material bodies. When the annihilation takes place, then all the matter that made up their material bodies merges into the sum total of matter, and the subtle form of the spirit soul remains within the body of the Lord. So the subtle body is the one that carries all the material desires. That's the mind, the intelligence, and the ego. So the gross body, all the gross elements go back to the gross. But the subtle body, which is contaminated by these desires within the mind, that carries that living entity, is not purified, to remain at rest, kind of a sleeping state. Which is interesting because even now, we do have these gross bodies. We go to sleep and we stay in that sleep state within our mind. And the gross body is not active, but the mind remains active even in sleep. But there is a stage beyond sleep. There's deep sleep where there's no dreams. So something like that remains in like deep sleep within the body of the Lord. The subtle bodies. It's all subtle bodies. The Lord does not sleep, but the ordinary living entities remain asleep until the next creation. And this is going on since time immemorial. This goes on and on and on and on. It's not just lifetime after lifetime, birth after birth, cycle of birth and death. It's creation after creation after creation. This can go on. Hey, Krishna. Oh my goodness. The Lord does not sleep, but the ordinary living entities remain asleep until the next creation. An unintelligent person thinks that the opulence of the Supreme Lord is non-existent after the annihilation. But that's not a fact. The opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead remains as it is in the spiritual world. Only in the material world is everything dissolved. Brahma-lina, merging into the Supreme Brahman, is not actually lina, or annihilation. For the subtle form remains in the Brahman effulgence and returns to the material world after the material creation and again assume a material form. Okay, so that's where all these living entities remain when the material creation is dissolved. Those that are contaminated, they remain in the Brahman effulgence. And then they come back down to the material platform, gross material platform, to become active again. This is described as bhutva bhutva praliyate. When the material body is annihilated, the spirit soul remains in a subtle form, which later assumes another material body. Yeah, it's not just going on, lifetime after lifetime, birth and death, birth and death, birth and death. It's going on creation after creation after creation. On a small time scale, it's going on, 8,400,000 species, life and over and over again, being born as this, and then dying, and then in the subtle body carrying the desires, living, and get another material body. Okay, that's for the duration of Lord Brahma's lifetime, creation of the universe. And then when Lord Shiva winds it down, the living entities, they still have the gross material body. It's like death, but the subtle material body remains, and the living entities are suspended in this Brahma Jyoti in a sleep state until the next manifestation, creation, and then they're again. This goes on and on and on. When the material body is annihilated, the gross material body, the spirit soul remains in a subtle form, which later assumes another material body. This is true for the conditioned souls, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead remains eternally in his original consciousness and spiritual body. Yeah, that's why this is external activities. They're external activities. The Lord can accommodate this activity, but he's not subject to it. Takes 48. Yeah, I think we have time. It's a short commentary. Let's see. Krishna continues. or Lord Vishnu form of Krishna, continues, I am the reservoir of unlimited potency, and therefore I'm known as unlimited or all-pervading. From my material energy, the cosmic manifestation appeared within me, and in this universal manifestation appeared the chief being, Lord Brahma, who is your source and is not born of a material mother. The Lord is explaining all knowledge to Prajapati Daksha. So he says, I'm the reservoir of unlimited potency, and therefore I'm known as unlimited or all-pervading. From my material energy, the cosmic manifestation appeared within me. It's within Krishna, but it's still considered external because Krishna is not subordinate to it. In this universal manifestation appeared the chief being, Lord Brahma, who is your source and is not born of a material mother. He's not just Daksha's source, he's also our source. We're descendants. We're hearing about our ancestors, which goes way back to the beginning of the creation. And we are also situated in the Brahma Sampradaya. So he is our source, and he's also our original spiritual master, Lord Brahma. Prabhupada's commentary. This is a description of the history of the universal creation. The first cause is the Lord himself, the Supreme Person. From him, Brahma is created, and Brahma takes charge of the affairs of the universe. The universal affairs of the material creation depend upon the material energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is therefore the cause of the material creation. The entire cosmic manifestation is described herein as guna vigraha, the form of the Lord's qualities. From the cosmic universal form, the first creation is Lord Brahma, who is the cause of all living entities. In this regard, Srila Madhvacharya describes the unlimited attributes of the Lord. There's a paraphrase here. Parasya Shaktir Vividhaya Shruyate. The Lord has innumerable potencies, all of which are unlimited. Therefore, the Lord himself, in all his qualities, forms, pastimes, and paraphernalia, are also unlimited. Because Lord Vishnu has unlimited attributes, he is known as Ananta. Brahma is created and takes charge of the affairs of the universe. This is how Krishna manages things. Everyone is emanating from Krishna, even Lord Brahma, but his energies are multifarious, and they act and interact in unlimited ways, in the varieties of Krishna's potencies. It's unlimited attributes. All his qualities, forms, pastimes, and paraphernalia are also unlimited. His capacity for pleasure is unlimited. He's eternal, never dies, is not subject to the material creation. This is Krishna. This is Krishna Chaitanya. This is the special mercy of Lord Chaitanya Sankirtan. Spreading Krishna consciousness throughout the entire universe. Unlimited attributes. He's known as Ananta. Oh, Hare Krishna.